Hey everybody, we are in the third week of our series called She Speaks, and it's a series where we are examining the lives of some really incredible women in the Bible. And this week we read a really sad and strange story. I think the saddest and strangest story in all the Bible. It's the story of Jephthah's daughter. You can read it in Judges 10 starting in verse 17 through Judges 11 verse 40. So I encourage you now to kind of pause before you get into things and read that as a group. There were two big ideas. The first big idea was that important people tend to sacrifice unimportant people at the altar of their self-importance. And then the second big idea was that God came into the world as the unimportant person who was sacrificed by the important people in order to show us that there's no such thing as an expendable, unimportant person. Because if God came as the unimportant person, if God decided to come into the world and take the form of the unimportant person, then we never ever have the right to think any person is expendable or unimportant, because that's who God was when God was on earth. Our discussion questions, we've got kind of our stock 2 questions, and again the idea is that this provides a space for you to not just fill in the blanks on answers, but to instead really talk about how what we talked about on Sunday landed on you and affects you in your own life. And so the goal is for you to open up your life and talk about what's actually going on, not just fill in the blanks on answers. Okay, so the first question was, what was most interesting or encouraging to you? Second question, what was most challenging to you? Third question, it's a little bit more complicated. How do we make sense of the fact that while Scripture clearly condemns child sacrifice in numerous places, we talked about some of them on Sunday, and thus Scripture clearly would condemn Jephthah's sacrifice of his daughter, Hebrews, the book of Hebrews in chapter 11, it still speaks positively of Jephthah, even though he did this awful thing that Scripture clearly condemns, and then it completely ignores his daughter. Right? How do we make sense of that? And this kind of gets to questions of good biblical interpretation, and what do we do with these really complex issues where it's not clear how we're supposed to make sense of what Scripture is saying. Next question, a little bit more personal here. Tell us about a time where someone sacrificed you at the altar of their self-importance. Or conversely, tell us about a time that you sacrificed somebody else, right? Their dreams, their desires, their feelings at the altar of your self-importance. And then finally, our action step was to remember that God has demonstrated that there's no such thing as an expendable, unimportant person. And so what can we do, like as a group, let's kind of talk about what things can we do to keep that truth in our memory, because it's so easy for us to forget that God has said there's no such thing as an expendable, unimportant person. And so what can we do to help each other keep that truth in our memory? Happy discussing, and I hope you had a great 4th of July and have a great week. Bye.